Good evening, Abdi, and welcome to another Night o Lyfe we Fife. We're heading a few week ago with the author, writer, and Scots language activist Emma Gray. And the night I'm going to be speaking a Jack Capener or Capner, depending on how you want to say it. To be honest, I think it's Capener, but we'll ask the man himself. This is terrific research here. So we're going on my socials as well as the Hands Up for Quad socials. And although this is a Scots language event, there is actually an ongoing event called Sashin the Gaelic, where there are several Gaelic language events taking part in person and online. So here we Google O Sashin na Gaelic and see if you can get to anything. So, love the background banter. Oh my goodness. I hope you didn't hear any background banter because you didn't supposed to hear anything. If you've got any questions, please spear them at us. We'll answer them. You can actually watch this for the beginning after. So if you come in halfway through, then that's fine. Or if you're watching this at a different time in which you're already watching it. Cool. I'm just going to introduce you to Jack Capener. We'll ask him. I've kent Jack for 2019 onwards. He is first and foremost a Scots language activist, I would say, but he dabbles in singing Scots songs and doing Scots poetry. And when he's roped in, he also does a very good toast to the lassies and all. So he's a man of many talents, and he is the founder of Vice, which is the official campaign for a Scots Language Act. And of course, this is exceptionally important this year, as in 2021, the Scots Pledge was signed by our 29% of sitting Parliament. And just last week, we had the Scots census, in which there was a question: if you speak, understand, screeve, read, write Scots. So yeah, please welcome Jack Capener.
Hello, Abdi. Hiya. It's good to be here. And I'll settle for Capener. Sometimes Capner, never Carpenter. Some folk just throw in the R and the T. I wouldn't accept that, but that's what I get for no having a good old Scots name. That's my problem.
Fair enough. So it's really exciting to be kind of hearing an informal blether. I kind of market it today to you as an interview, but it's not really an interview, to be honest, because interviews require stringent research. And I ken you, so I didn't think that I was actually going to do any research at all because I'm just lazy like that. I see that Roy Fulton in the comments says hello. Mark Bernhardt says thanks for live streaming. And my father says aye. So that's our comments thus far. So Jack, what have you been up to this week?
Oh, what have I been up to this week? I've been out in the hills a wee bit, very briefly, over the weekend. I have been working and I've been drinking a lot of coffee because I've been working. So I write mixed max. I think that my life is mostly between Edinburgh and any hill that I can boost myself up.
I saw a couple of weeks sign that you were up a hill with crampons on your beats. And for me, that's serious hill walking. My father does all the Monroes and all that. I get up Conic Hill, a Puckle Sunday sign, and that puggled me out, and I thought I was just about dead. So yeah, you're a serious rambler. Which is
I
this
see
is quite
hills like Conic Hill. That's a gateway drug. You'll get into it in no time. Give yourself 23 years, you'll be at where your ice axe need it.
I hope so. I was just limping all the way up and all the way down because I was thinking I really didn't want to dislocate a knee at the top and hate to be helicoptered back home because my car would be stuck in Balmaha. So that
I
would
know
be
that's the good thing about going up in snowy conditions, though. You can just slide your way down. Best thing about winter mountaineering is that they actually have a technical term for just sliding on your arse down a hill. It's glissading.
glissading. That sounds really
Yeah,
Scots, actually.
it's no Scots word, but it's one for the dictionary.
I've got some comments already. We heard your wee havers afore the start. Oh no, oh no, 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 no. That's no what we're needing. Right, we're gonna have to get our technical team to fix that for next time. Sarah says the auto-generated captions are hilarious. Facebook definitely doesn't understand Scots. Frank King says just Benally dates me. Oh, as in the hill in Edinburgh. Is Benally in Edinburgh?
Finale. Oh, it's kind of Pentland's way, I think. Aye, yeah, yeah.
So, without further havering, yeah, so you founded Urvice back in 2019, and the first ever Urvice kind of meeting, I would say it wasn't like a constituted committee at that time, but it was a meeting to kind of, was it to test the waters, to see about interest? Was it a meeting to get the Algarve to reinvent the wheel? But you had the first ever meeting the day after the Scots Language Awards, and I wasn't invited. I was raging. I was pure raging. I didn't ken about it. I heard about it after, and I was thinking, what's going on? I was hanging as well. How did you all
Well,
did it
we
hanging?
were all out the night before. That's the thing, and maybe it was a case that we saw you, the night before, and thought, I don't know if we need her like in our movement. I could deal with that, but no, I mean, Urvice was kind of it basically started with me being frustrated and angry at the total lack of any action and making a Twitter page and thinking I was the first ever person to do any sort of activism on Scots. And, a lot of these movements kind of start that way and then they kind of fizzle it into nothing. But I think Urvice has been one of the lucky ones where it's actually really galvanized the movement. I think there's been a lot of kind of disparate political action on Scots, a little bit of campaigning for this bit of funding here, this bit of funding there. But there hasn't been much effort to really unite the community around a specific cause until now. And Urvice was basically an attempt to do that, to say, right, what's the one thing that we're asking for? And how do we all get together and achieve it and speak with Urvice as a community? It's not about the divisions in the community. It's not about the differences. It's not about dialects. And it certainly isn't about arguing about spelling. It's just folk being really single-minded about what political action do we want. We're all together. We're all Scots speakers. Let's put differences aside. That can all come after we've actually got some sort of basis to work on. But I did again, if you wanted to hear a bit about the kind of ancient history of Vice, where it all come from originally.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm here for it.
So it was, I spent a year abroad living in Chile in 2017 to 2018, which all my pals absolutely rip the hell out of me for bringing up at every opportunity that I can. Did you know I lived in South America for a year? Yeah, just to remind you, I am pretty cultured. But that experience of being abroad, that kind of, I mean, it's very much, it's the Burns thing to see yourselves as others see us, because I was speaking Scots to folk in Chile, and I was seeing it as a kind of fun little quirky slang that was from my childhood and didn't really have much relevance to me now, but folk were interested in it, and it was a way of basically differentiating yourself from the other English speakers. And so I kind of got more engaged with Scots as folk were asking me about it, saying, what's that word? What's this word? And I didn't really get an answer. I had to start looking up, like, well, why do we say we? Why do we say they? And that kind of led me to this rabbit hole, realizing, oh my God, I'm bilingual. This is a gift that I have. And basically, I just got really passionate about Scots being abroad. And I think it also helped that I was in a space where I could speak Scots and have folk be really interested in it and accepting it, as opposed to the pushback that you see sometimes in Scotland. I was kind of insulated for the anti-Scots vices. So by the time that I got back, I was starting to get interested in politics and campaigning, and the issues that I started caring about were Scots, and I started looking into what provision is there for the Scots language, and there's none, was basically the answer that I found. So, like I say, got frustrated, got angry, made a Twitter account, and then decided, well, it can't just be me havering on Twitter about we should do this and we should do that. It needs to be democratic. So get the community involved, and that's who our Vice started. Minus you, but you came along later.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about the Hale thing is that we've got quite a lot of cross-generational involvement. We've got folk. I would say I'm the youngest at 24, and up until recently, we had Andraff. I was in his 70s, and it wasn't just like the Algard, because a load of the similarities between traditional music and also the Scots language and probably the Gaelic language movement as well is that there's this other generation of folk that have tried and tested to do things and they didn't change. They like to do things the way that they've always done it, whether or not that's actually conducive to achieving their goals or not. They just do it through they've done it because that's it. And we see that a lot with folk clubs. And this isn't me moaning about the community or anything, but there's definitely a generational issue. We trying to get statutory recognition, what does it look like? Are we going to haes street signs? All of these questions, I'm fed up going to meetings and it's just folk reinventing the wheel and having the same conversations hour and hour and hour again. And I think that what your advice is very good at is being able to say, no, that's not our remit. Education's not our remit. Our remit is to not to educate folk what Scots is about. That's a Scots Language Centre. Our remit is solely to campaign for an act and we either not peer reviewed, but try with other organisations to paint a picture of what that act might actually entail. But your job is, but similarly, if I didn't realise that we kind of we're no a funded organisation that can pick folk into schools or train up teachers or HUD workshops, or we're no that kind of thing. It's a single cause thing. And a lot of the time there's loads of duplication with all these organisations, and it means that there's loads of stuff going about, but really the provision isn't there in Parliament. And what is really interesting with you is that you've got a background in politics. You can tell us a wee bit about that.
Aye, so my original foray into politics was just as a petty political activist for the SNP. In about kind of mid 2019, I started getting involved around about the European elections, and my first action on Scots was bringing a motion for a Scots language board to the SNP conference in Aberdeen. And that was my first experience bringing Scots into politics, and it was also my first experience in affecting political change as an activist. And I think since then, kind of my time in politics has matured me to realising that no everything gets done through political parties, no even everything gets done through Parliament, because now I work for an SNP MP in the Westminster Parliament. And as much as you can do in Parliament, you need a civic society to kind of start the change. I think a lot of political action gets finished and turned into legislation through parliaments and through MPs and MSPs and councillors, but it starts at the ground level. And I was really interested in kind of being part of the ground level, starting the change as opposed to just implementing it. So I'm kind of in a unique position, I suppose, being involved with your advice and also working for the Westminster Parliament, that I'm kind of at both ends of the process. In my job, I see what it's like when campaigners like your advice bring an issue to us and say, right, this is legislation we're calling for. And then in your advice, I'm at the other end of the table saying, this is what we're calling for, and meeting with folk in the Holyrood Parliament to try and get that implemented. So it's been really useful being at both sides of the table and seeing what parliamentarians want for advice, and then what our advice should be given to parliamentarians.
That's super interesting. And I think the MP that you work for has been really, really great vocally in the chamber doing South, putting motions in whenever they see fit, especially, around the Spotify thing. It was really interesting, that debate where Rees-Mogg said, Scots and Welsh are foreign languages. And it really, really was an eye-opening experience to see the way that language is thought of as, in some cases, soft poor. And it shouldn't kind of be like that, because we need to realise that language is a very much a cross-party thing. And our Vice is really great in making sure that anyone and everyone can become involved. And we've hosted some really great events for it's ended up getting heated, but respectfully heated. Because the thing is that Scots is for Abdi. And I mine Peter Chapman years ago at Bothy Ballad competitions, and he would stand up, sing a song, and it would be amazing. And he would just be the broadest, like, it was great. It was really great. And then, there was fight going, oh, he's that MP, MSP, he's that money doing in Parliament. But some of the greatest campaigners for Scots have, they've not been one political party. They've been from across party, a range of parties. And I think that's something that we really, really need to keep going.
Our Vice really tries to reflect that. I mean, you mentioned our Scots pledge last year in the election. I mean, it wasn't just an SNP Green thing. It was all the parties signed the Scots pledge to varying degrees. And there's a massive amount, think of some of the places that Scots is strongest. You've got the Borders, you got the Northeast, you got the Northern Isles. These aren't the SNP places. It's just this kind of weird myth that you find online, basically for trolls who didn't care what they're havering about, that it's some sort of SNP plot, Gaelic road signs and teaching this fake language to the bairns. The reality doesn't reflect that. We've had some amazing supportive MSPs like Peter Chapman that have brought our cause to the Tory leadership, and it's a language that's spoken by Abdi. It doesn't. Languages didn't follow political boundaries. They're their own thing. And our Vice really tries to reflect that, which is why I'm quite open that I've been involved with the SNP in the past. Doesn't have anything to do with my language activism. The two things are totally separate.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what's quite interesting is I work with the Musicians Union, and of course, like, that's very hardline labour. But nowadays, it really doesn't matter. We really, like, if a musician has an issue, they represent you. It's really like there's a degree of separation between politics and trade unionism now. And there should be a degree of separation between language activism, your personal politics, who you support, and then overall politics. But unfortunately, I mean, we have to compare and contrast. And out in Northern Ireland, this is the awkward thing. I mean, my views are my views. I'm Iona, and this is on the Hands Up for Chad socials. It's also on my socials, but I must disclaimer that this is my view. My view is that our there Scots and Ulster Scots is really, it's great. They've got street signs at some places. They've got kind of I'm not too sure if it's actually in Stormont, but there's you see signages being propped up all the time. A lot's going on. There's loads of cultural activity that's funded, that's Today We Ulster Scots. But sometimes I feel like it's being progressed as a kind of, oh, well, the Gaelic has gotten this, so we need it. It's very politicised, and that makes me really, really sad. And it makes me feel really uncomfortable. But recently I did a really awesome thing for haes, which was a BBC Two Northern Ireland show, which is a really, really great show, presented by Mark Thompson and Ruth Sanderson. And it's to do, well, this series was to do with, Scotland and Northern Ireland and the links between them. And it was brilliant. It was celebratory. It was really good. But I can't help but notice that we in language activism and policies, they're furthering the cause for Scots and for Ulster Scots by beating the stick against the other side. And that's, over here, it's amazing that we didn't do that. Your Gaelic counterparts are friends, we learn from them. Our act hopefully would emulate the Gaelic Language Act of 2005, and we keep reminding people online it was Labour Lib Dem coalition that did the Gaelic Language Act. It was
Abdi that voted it through. There wasn't a single MSP that day that voted against it.
yeah, so it does make me worry that our here we're doing our best to try and make sure that Scots is really cross-party for Abdi, no matter what your thoughts are, if you're conservative, if you're liberal, if you're centrist, it doesn't matter. The why that you speak, it doesn't matter. But I do feel uncomfortable about the fact that the Sheikh, it's no say kind of liberal and clean cut. It's very divided, and that's representative of their background. But it does not help. I'm not sure.
Well, you need to be doing taking action for language for the right reason at the end of the day. I mean, it's good that they hear all that, but if it isn't for the right reasons, then you're going to create resentment, you're going to create divisions where none had to be. And I think although the situation isn't analogous in Scotland, politics and especially constitutional politics does play into it. I mean, it in the sense that the lack of action in Scotland, and some maybe SNP supporting folk might not like me for saying this, but I think the lack of action ties into a kind of fierceness about kind of rocking the boat that you see in the Scottish government at the moment. I do worry that the lack of action on Scots can be partly due to the fact that, oh, the Scottish government doesn't want to make it look like they're stoking divisions, or their fear that maybe all these unionists kind of like trolls online, that they might really be representative of the population. And that if you take any action on Scots, then you're going to cause flare-ups and divisions. And it just isn't the case. But I think the fear that it might be does prevent action. And we wouldn't be having that kind of roadblock if not for the constitutional question in Scotland. There's nothing you can do to fix that, really, other than kind of keep making the argument that Scots isn't about the constitution. But politics, absolutely, broader politics, whether you like it or no, does play into language activism, and it's something you always need to be really sensitive about and kind of work around.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing right now in Ukraine, with the official line being that Putin wants the Russian language to be an accepted and official language of Ukraine, this shows how powerful language is, that this is high up in his list of demands for peace. And this is shocking. I'm not trying to compare and contrast or anything, but language is really important. It's really important to a country. It's really important to your sense of identity. And a wee bit of the work that I've been doing was a wee Scots language book called Neeps and Tatties that was administered with the Scots Language Centre, but mostly Nil by Mouth, which is an anti-sectarian charity, which is doing amazing work, putting resources into schools, especially in the central belt of Scotland, to try and really reset the button on sectarianism, making sure that these kids are growing up and that we're actually just being respectful of one another. And this wee book has been in, I think, almost every regional educational area in Scotland. Our 300 to 500 of the books have been put out for free. It's a Broadway book, but there's more work being done in schools right now to make sure that kids are kind of cottoning onto it, because they're the next generation of speakers that are going to carry the flag, whatever flag they choose to carry. But yeah, I'm really interested to. Other than this, I'm really interested to keep an eye on the linguistic nature of the war in Ukraine, because language is a huge, huge thing.
I mean, that whole region is so linguistically charged. I mean, Belarus is another fascinating example, and maybe a slightly more analogous to Scotland in the sense that it's a country where its own indigenous language is being suppressed and put down by the political leadership. Not that we're actively suppressing it in Scotland, but there's almost a Belarusian cringe, like we hear with this kind of Scots cringe. And it is, I mean, comparisons end there, but it's just, I was in Latvia a while sign, and about 25% of the population speak Russian there. And that was during the Soviet times. There was a policy of bringing Russian speakers into Latvia, because it's a way, um, first of all, kind of using language as almost a colonization technique, because the language that you speak influences the way that you think and who you can interact with, the comfortableness with which you can interact with them. You can create, just by folks speaking Russian here, you create a stronger link between them and the political leadership in Moscow, for example. So you can totally, language can be a tool to influence politics, just like politics can be a tool to influence language.
Absolutely, that's an amazing point to make. And I mean, we would. Whenever I try to explain to folk that aren't really Scots speakers and aren't really Gaelic speakers, they just like are kind of going along acquiescently. Mostly folk for the Central Belt that they didn't want to identify as either. I do remind them. I was like, Gaelic was really oppressed. I mean, the experience of Gaelic speakers is horrific. Back 200 years ago wasn't actually that long time. And we're still facing the statistics. So that's why the Gaelic Language Act came first. And of course, in the Northeast, we were pretty happy just ploughing the fields and fishing and whaling, and we kind of kept ourselves to ourselves. So we didn't hate redcoats coming and setting fire to the thatched house and banning our bothy ballads and banning our instruments as much as people in the Highlands had. So there's reasons as to why Scots has survived as a living lead itself without being propped up. And that's why both languages need really specific things, and they need to be dealt with together but also separately. And I'm just wondering, like, you yourself, you hear a wee bit of Gaelic, you hear you're fluent in Scots. I'm just wondering what you think of that, because the why that I feel is that online the haters, it's new very different. So I saw somebody screaming about the census saying, oh, I tick the yes box to Gaelic. Gaelic is a language. Wait, no. Somebody said on Twitter, I saw the question about Gaelic, that's fine. I saw the question about Scots, and that's not a language. I don't agree. So some of these people who are haters of the Scots language, they don't have the same hatred for Gaelic, but they're still the same people with the same logos and the same flags in their accounts. How do we explain that? Why is it, this is an anomaly, but how do we explain that, Ian?
I've always thought, and it kind of comes back to my Chile experience, that the similarity of Scots to English, their sister languages, of course, they're similar. They come from the same roots. That's very normal in most of the world. I mean, when I was in Chile, I was living with Catalan folk, Galician folk. They were speaking leads that were basically mutually understandable in a lot of ways to Spanish, but with distinctions. Folk could kind of get it, kind of not. But they both accepted that they were speaking different languages, but there was overlap. That's normal in most of the world. But we're on an island, and we're on an island with an awfully centralized view of itself that looks south and sees there's yin culture and that, and yin way of speaking, and the rest is kind of peripheral to that. So we aren't used to the idea that languages overlap, cultures overlap. We've got the sea around us kind of creates this view of like hard borders between different cultures and states. Like every state is an island, every culture and every language is an island. That just isn't who things are. So we see Gaelic and we think, oh, that's definitely not English. That doesn't sound, I can't understand a word of that. But we hear Scots and it's like, oh, I can kind of get that. Folks slip in and out in and out English and into Scots. They speak in a spectrum. It must just be English. Aye, so I think that's part of the resilience of Scots is because of that. Is the fact that it's so easy to adapt. It brings English words into itself. It puts Scots words into English. That's meant it's been really flexible in surviving all these years, in spite of no support and active suppression. But it also means that it gives ammo to them that can say it isn't a language. And I'm no interested in really engaging with folk that are arguing this, because actually most of them aren't doing it in good faith. If somebody genuinely out of good faith wants to hear that discussion about what is a language, what isn't. I'm more than happy to hear that discussion. It's an important one to hear. But most of the folk that you see that are saying that, they didn't want to discuss linguistics. They just want to basically punch down. And that I can never understand. There's so much punching down against Scots speakers. Why does it bother folk that we're speaking Scots? Who cares? I mean, it's a linguistic minority. Why are you picking on something that is weak as it is? It's just so it really frustrates me. Just it isn't bullying, but it's the same kind of mindset. It's this is weak, and I'm gonna push it even further into the ground because it's easy to do. So it's easy target.
Yeah, and a huge part of this is the fact that we've been biding online for the last year. But yeah, what you're saying is completely bang on. You know, Gaelic and Gaelic are binary languages. It's 1 or 0. You either understand it or you dinna. Whereas we Scots, we've got this beautiful mutual intelligibility. We English far, you've got a continuum, a sliding scale. This idea that you can be speaking in, Scottish Standard English, and then otherwise here you've got full bore Scots. And then in the middle, depending on, far you are, far you're speaking to, what you're doing, what you're up to, that's when you decide, oh, well, I'm going to maybe speak a wee bit more English with Scots words strapped in, or I'm going to be full bore Scots with less English strapped in. And that's the beauty of Scots, because it means that, you can adapt, and that's the part of the why it's been preserved so long. But something really interesting that I can't get out is the fact that our lead is an international lead. I mean, I got out to Denmark last year for a week, and the word for songwriter in both Danish and Scots is sangskriver, almost spelt the exact same. Efter for after, myself for myself, utgang for ging ut. It's just, it showed the links, and I love it. And of course in Norwegian as well, with sma and bra and hus and stew and greet and to flit. Like, I just can't get out of it. I think it's amazing. And
I was saying about Latvia. Even Latvia, the word for a child is bairn,
yeah,
because they were part of the Swedish kingdom for a while, and they picked it up for them. I mean, words travel. I mean, there's no particularly indigenous about any word. They cross borders and they float about, and it's beautiful. It's a really bonny thing, and it should be celebrated.
it should be. I'm just taking a wee look at the comments. I knew James Proctor is singing your praises. I've campaigned with Jack, and he is a great campaigner. I agree.
Hey, James.
My wee gran talk the bra and the spiel. Wait, am I saying that right? What does that mean? Spiel, the bra and the spiel. Wait, spiel.
It isn't in my Embra Scots, so I didn't ken.
Okay, so spiel would be like explain what you're saying, Frank. So spiel, I'm doing a long spiel I knew. In German, spiele, to play. Red coats were originally called lobster tails. Kathleen is watching from Pennsylvania in the States saying, very interesting discussion. Well, that's what we thrive to do here. So this idea that Scots is very much a global lead. Just a couple of months sign, we had a lang sign being blasted out at the end, the closing ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics. This was amazing. I thought it was just great. And I just wonder, like, how many folk will happily join in with a lang sign and then blast the lead on Twitter? And it's just this hypocrisy. And I find that after events, it gets worse. So after the first ever Scots Language Awards in 2019, organised by Hands Up for Chad, the abuse the East Day on Twitter just got up. And then after the Lead Awards in 2021, I noticed that a few specific accounts had created a pylon. And there are a few very specific accounts that I'm not going to mention, but they troll the internet for Scots information, and then they share it, and then they create a pylon. It's almost like they're obsessed. And this isna today the influx of support for Scots, but over the last year, if you look on analytics on Google, you'll find that Scots has been searched for more than it has been in several years. You'll find that appetite for Scots is good up. And of course, this is thanks to organisations, a few individuals with large followings. It's so many different reasons. Just maybe folk being inside a wee bit more, being on the internet more, and we hang out on the internet. But there's more of an appetite for Scots, and I really hope that that's reflected in the census. We had the I Can campaign, which was brought. I must admit, really, I did not understand what the census was going on about. I was a bit upset when Scots was just like a kind of tick boxy thing, whereas everything else was just, there was options and stuff. What do you think? I mean, we've already conducted our own research into the future of Scots, and fan our advice, we're looking at that. The wording was we needed to really think with the wording. How do you think that we can use data for our survey and the census going forward for parliamentary reasons? Like, how can we use that data? How important is it to hear that data?
I think simply reflecting that Scots speakers exist is good enough. Whether there's 10,000 or 1.5 million, like the last census said, the fact that Scots exists is reason enough to take action. The census, it isn't really particularly useful academically. We've got a great member, our vice, Iona Fyfe, is a great academic, a great researcher of Scots, and a new Scot herself, so she brings a really unique perspective. And she's been leading on our Future of Scots project, which is kind of delving into what does the public want for Scots, what do teachers want for Scots, what do artists, creatives, policymakers. That's useful academically to delve into the qualitative data. But when it comes to the census, just showing that Scots exists, it should be enough. I think there's too much an emphasis nowadays in our current kind of political climate of having to justify spending on languages by saying, Rabbie Burns is worth 200 million this year, so that's why it's important to the economy that we support Scots, or justifying it through education, which is important, of course, but at the end of the day, it should be enough that it exists. It's our culture. It's a way of seeing the world. It's beautiful. That we should be allowed to get emotional about it. Scots is the way that folk think of their grannies or their bairns. It's the way they think about the tunes that they bide in. It's the way they see the countryside. It's the songs that they sing. It means something to folk. You shouldn't hate to, I was go for the kind of cold hard data to justify something. I think that the existence of a unique culture is enough in itself, because you always hear governments lamenting what they've lost. Again, an indigenous community dies out or a language dies out, and it's awfully sad. But why did they not do anything? You can get emotional once it's dead, but you didn't seem to be allowed to be emotional while you're trying to save it. Now, Scots is important to education. The SQA recognised that. They say that the Scots Language Award actively boosted a bairn's chances. It is useful.
It was proven that the Scots Language Award narrowed this attainment gap that opposition parties had been banging on about for years. Well, the Scots Language Act helped to narrow it. And it's beyond me that your ability to access education in Scots is a postcode lottery. If you're like me and you grew up in in an Aberdeenshire school for the farmers in the corridor are speaking completely different to the way they speak in class, because the teachers are still some of them are still a bit please say present, not I. I didn't hear the best education in Scots when I was doing my National 5 music, my higher music, I had to do classical and English, French, Latin, German, but they didn't want me doing Scots songs because they didn't know how to grade it properly. So
Aye.
there is provisions that are needed officially in Scots. But then, if in the postcode lottery, if you happen to bide in Banff, then you have all the Scots provisions under the world through Jamie Fairbairn. But there's only so much that teachers can do. Like, we really need for the top doing to max Scots into the syllabus, whether that be in music, in English, and in history, in our geography, and all. We've got place names that, up in the northeast, we actually have a Welsh place name called Llanbride, and it's Lanbryde. In Welsh, that's Llanbride. And for me, that's really exciting because, of course, the hail of this island spak a type of Brythonic Welsh afore we spoke English. So our place names, the morn I'm going for a wee brack up in Fife, and I'm going to Anster. Of course, folk that are na fae there would call it Anstruther. You're completely right when we say that our lead is to do with our memories, or like the way that we see the countryside. And yeah, this is what terrifies the haters, is that we have a sense of identity. And that is the crux of the argument, is why can we no get proper provision? Is it because we didn't want they didn't want to rock the boat? So yeah, I mean, we could go on all night about this, but I'd like you to ask, to tell me, no to ask. I'm going to speed at you what your 3 favourite Scots poets are.
Right. I basically there's however many to choose for, but I had a wee rummage in my poetry pile, and I've got two, and one is Obdi'll ken them. The other, they'll ken them, but no necessarily for their Scots poetry. So I've got two choices, and I think they really demonstrate the kind of breadth of Scots, the flexibility of Scots, that it isn't just for, bothy ballads, or isn't just for like chatting in the pub. It can be used for anything, any language, of course, but we didn't see that in Scots because it's a link to class a lot of the time. So the first is, of course, Hugh MacDiarmid, and I chose Hugh MacDiarmid because he discusses philosophy through poetry in Scots. He discusses questions of nationhood through poetry in Scots. He demonstrates a real kind of academic view of Scots. The way that he uses Scots as a language really pushes its boundaries in the way that, I mean, a lot of folk criticise what he did with Scots, in creating this kind of synthetic Scots, Lowlands, that he basically made up a language because he reinvigorated old words that that had fallen out of use, and kind of created new amalgamated words.
Yeah, but exactly what you're speaking about now, about Hugh MacDiarmid, creating something, that's exactly what Tam and Ashley hit today. Fan, they created the Firefox browser in Scots. I mean,
Aye.
the idea
And
of
we do English all the time. That's the thing. I mean, you use an old fancy English word, everyone gets dead impressed with it, but you try and use an out of use Scots word, and suddenly you're using a makey uppy language. And I've got a real admiration for what Hugh MacDiarmid did for Scots in pushing its boundaries, especially at a time when it wasn't fashionable. I mean, it still isn't particularly fashionable. But it was a lot less in the 20s and 30s. So he's my first choice, and then the second, and a lot of folk will ken her, but it's Nan Shepherd. Most folk will ken either her fae the 5 pound note, or they'll ken her nature writing in the Living Mountain. But she actually wrote a couple of poems in Scots, and she was a Doric speaker herself. She was biding just outside Aberdeen, and she demonstrates. She uses Scots in the same way that she uses English to talk about the landscapes that she loves, the Cairngorms. And if you didn't mind, I'll just read a wee short poem of hers about the Cairngorms. And I just think it's, if McDermott shows the ability of Scots to be academic and philosophical and political, she uses it for landscape in the way that she understood the world through her own tongue. So this is it. O lichtam o the hills, said ye gang out, to whatna dark the world'll fall. Nae mair the thoughts of men'll travel yont the world, frae af some shining ben. Nae mair the glint of snaw, out ower the world's wa, will mak men doot gin they've their een or na. O lichtam o the hills. Bonnie is ahin, and it's the perfect demonstration of Scots as a thing of beauty and a thing of rhyme and rhythm. So that they're my two choices to show varying different ends of the Scots spectrum.
Thank you so much. This has been really insightful. We've covered a wheen of things. We've covered the political. We've dealt with a load of different big questions. Yeah, really, really excited to see what you're going to do going for it. Please, if you're watching at home, check out Urvyce. That is ORVYCE. And you can join as a member. That doesn't mean that you hate Dionihan. It's just you basically put your email down. You get invites to events that you didn't hate to come if you didn't want to. Basically, you're kept in a loop with what we're doing to try and get a Scots Language Act. It's free to join. We need as many members as possible, because when we do, going for it, we want to show that there's a wheen of folk that are interested in an act. So please do check out Urvyce, in which Jack is the founding member. This has been lovely. Please remember that it's Sasha na Gaelic Week this week. There's loads of events online and in person, and we want to celebrate both leads. I kind of want to end. You've ended this perfectly with that poem. But I'm just looking at my wall, and I've got a Hugh McDermott quote: "To be yourselves, and to make that worth being, nae harder job to mortals has been given." I love it. Absolutely. Thank you, Abdi. In the comments, please you can, if you've just joined, you can go back to the beginning and watch this whole conversation. A huge thanks to Hands Up for Chad, which is a lottery funded organisation funded by Creep Scotland and all. So we're going to say good night to you all, and see you somewhere.
Just before we go, do you mind if I do a wee plug for some fundraising that I'm doing, if it's all right? I'm walking the north coast of Scotland at the start of April, from Cape Brath to Duncan's Bay Head. It's about 200 miles, and I'm doing it for charities in Ukraine. So if anybody wants to give to that fundraiser to get money straight to Ukraine, straight to civilians and the armed forces on the ground, then it's justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Jack Capener Ukraine. So I'd really appreciate any help you can give.
We'll put that in the comments and all. That sounds amazing. I wish I could join you, but I didn't have crampons, unfortunately. Huge thanks to Abdi for watching and your kind comments. Hey, a lovely evening. Right.
Thank you so much for having me.